Welcome back, everybody, to Flight Path, your one-stop shop for everything that has been going on with Tern over the past week. I am one of your three hosts, David. I'm the CEO and co-founder here at Tern, joined as always by Brad, our head of design, and Molly, our head of product. And we are so excited to dig into yet another week of the changes that have been made to the product, some stories from the conferences we've been going to, and a little bit of a look ahead at some of the really exciting updates that we've got in store for July. This is the last podcast that we're doing in June. So kind of crazy that we're talking about July already, but it's going to be another great month. As always, we'll start with a week in review. Brad, how's your week been?
My week has been wild. It's we've just got a lot going on as always. We probably just say that every week now and it's getting old, but yeah, there's just I feel like I'm still catching up on everything that's been going on over the last 4 days, but also been really energizing. We've got a lot of new folks on the team who are like jumping in immediately and just like trying to have an impact right away. And sometimes I feel like the old grumpy person being like, well, wait a minute, like, but we do things like this. But it's really fun to just like navigate all that and make sure that we can do more things and also do them in a way that like fits in with everything we've been doing. So that's kind of a little highlight from my week.
I like your grumpy impression. I think that was apt. But definitely feel that. Molly, how's your week been?
Kind of similar. Yeah, it's like it's not only a bunch of new people, but it's like new folks spinning up entirely new functions that we've not been focused on historically as a company. And so as like leaders at Tern, we're all like having to lean in quite a bit, and it's both very exciting. And then it's also just, there's a lot of balls in the air right now, it feels like. And luckily I have a circus background, so I can juggle. So
that's why it's been so graceful for you. You're like, yeah, no problem. Like just throw another one of those flaming pins in the air or something, right? It's all good.
Pins, but I was a clown who juggled on a big red ball. But the story, unpack that later.
Sharing that on the podcast is wild.
Wow.
I cannot believe I just talked myself into. It's not even like I was bullied into it by you two, but
I know. Wow, it's just out there now, though. I can't wait for the comments.
God.
I think honestly, should we just end this? No one's going to listen to anything else.
Okay, we have to move on. That's wild. Okay.
So you learned something about Molly today. Anything else happened this week, Molly?
I feel like but let's just keep
keep going. Okay, perfect. I'll take over from there. And just to add some context, I mean, we've been adding and growing the team pretty consistently for the past like 6 months, but Molly sort of mentioned this over the past kind of really a couple of weeks. We've brought in Gal on the kind of AI efficiency, really exploring like how do we like make Tern work even more effectively and efficiently across things like implementation, across our processes. And like that's a super cross-functional role, which just puts pressure on everybody, but it's been so cool to see and just like start to glimpse a little bit of what the future there can look like and how much opportunity there is to really streamline the way that the agency transition in particular works. So like very exciting, but also just like, wow, it's like a lot of different things to figure out. You've got Karina joining on like the education and training side of things, who's like really going to be rethinking resources like Turn to Learn and our webinars and like all this different thing that are so important. But it's also like, there's so much to learn before you can teach, right? And I think that's like another really kind of cool thing that will, again, be paying off in a big way in the future, but it's like a lot of investment. So those are just kind of a couple examples. You hear these like, cross-functional juggling and standing up new functions. These are going to be like hugely impactful for all of you listening, but it's like a ton of our time to make sure that we're setting them up for success. So adds more pressure to the org as we're also adding a bunch of new engineers and like really adding and like trying to go faster and all the things. So it's good, but with part of this podcast is obviously a behind the scenes look. Like that's sort of what's going on behind the scenes, and there's always a little bit of chaos before things you start to find their groove and you really start to see the true kind of dividends. So that's exciting. One other kind of update, just like on my week, it's been another travel week. Was at the Travel Market Report conference in Toronto. This is one of just a small handful of Canadian conferences that we've been doing, but it's been pretty neat to see more and more Canadian users start to adopt Tern. We've made quite a few updates that really help with that around things like TICO compliance if you're on Ontario. And so we were there. And it was really fun. I mean, we did our dinner with Lauren from Modern Travel, who's like a early Tern partner, has really been helping us think through Canada. That was like just such a special dinner to start to imagine the future and hear about her business and the story there. And just so many cool connections, meeting with users, sitting down, and we'll tell them more throughout. But those events are always really fun, and it's kind of neat in Canada too, because I'd say in the early stages of growth. So a lot of people still hadn't heard of Tern, or they were looking at other systems, and we're just really excited to see everything that Tern could do. So it's been a fun week, energizing, but it's always a little tiring to be out on the road. So it's good to be back for a little while. And with that, we'll transition into one of the other big topics we've been spending some time on before we get into the product updates, which is our users conference. We've really been rallying. We've got Mallory and Grace. We're spending a ton of time thinking through like the kind of mandate, which is make this the most valuable conference that people are going to attend. And so, Molly, you're kind of part of that session. Do you want to talk about what you're excited about for the users conference? And
yeah, I think what I'm most excited about is it's such an invaluable chance to literally sit down with so many of you and like literally be side by side looking at how you're using Tern, what we could do to improve it, from the quick wins to the bigger features that you need. And because of that being such this like incredible, like once in a year probably experience, we're also going to be allocating and making sure that our engineering team has like free space on their like week to actually knock off some of those quick wins in other areas that we think we could improve really rapidly based on your in-person feedback. So I think it's gonna be pretty magical from that standpoint, where kind of the turn that ends the user conference might look a little bit different, right with your feedback, which kind of gives me chills. I'm really excited to do that. So
I think Brian volunteered to just sit in a glass box and code on the cruise so that you can all see him doing that too. So
yeah, our CTO Brian was like, I'm not really sure what else. Like, I'll just like sit there and code and like take requests like under the like little flap or whatever. I don't know.
flap. Is that what they call it in Cloud Camp? The little
It's now, isn't it? Oh my god.
Yeah, that's a funny image, but it is. I think that's like just so exciting to think about, right? Like, how do you take what Tern's really known for, which is this incredibly quick turnaround time of like listen, learn, build, and ship and repeat, and how do you bring that to the users conference? So, Brad, what are you? What was your kind of takeaway from that deep dive planning session? How are you thinking about it? What are you excited about?
Yeah, it's funny, like when we were like looking at a big agenda and I was like in designer mode, like designing an event and being like, all right, well, we have all these things, like should everyone be in one space at the same time? Like should we have varying types of content that people can, if you like different learning styles? And that was kind of the mode I was in yesterday when we were talking about it. So using a different kind of part of my designer brain. But I am really excited about kind of the variety of content we'll be able to provide for kind of whether you're a brand new or pretty new Tern user, maybe you've like done some trips, but you really want to level up and like step into automations and AI and want someone to like help you with that in real time, or like, want people to be like, you're thinking about groups. How do you scale your business? Like those types of things. I just think it's going to be so cool to like have, again, in-person opportunities to like hear how we do that in Tern, hear how other people do it just like generally for their business and help it grow, and then be able to talk to people on the Tern team in real time. So like, all right, well, there's this specific thing about my business. Can we like customize this for me? And it's going to be so special. So I'm just really hyped for the entire experience. I've never been on a cruise before, so like anxious about that. But I think spending time with you would be great.
Wait, can I say one more thing that I'm probably the most excited about out of anything?
Go for it.
Sure, that's what this is about. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I just feel like we have the best community of advisors ever. And just like, I'm excited to also just like hang out with you all and like the dinners and the happy hours and just like, I don't know. I feel like we're so lucky here that we have, it almost feels like the Facebook chat and like the webinar chat. It's like we're like friends with all of you too. So I think it's just going to be really fun from that perspective as well.
Yeah, we're gonna do. I think trying to do. We'll see. But like Flight Path Live on the last day and kind of talking about everything that's happened, and so that'll be. And by live, it may still be recorded and posted, but like we'll do it on the ship at the users conference. If you're there at the users conference, you'll watch us like recorded is sort of the idea. But yeah, it
officially agreed to that. By the way, no.
Well, we said it on the podcast now, so we're kind of committed. But it is, I think, going to be really coming out of that, and just like really fun examples. I mean, Brad was kind of talking about putting his designer hat on for the event. Like one of the things he's talking about is like how we're making sure that people, one of the number one things that people said they wanted to learn about on this cruise is like, how do I build my business with groups? And so it's like, okay, cool. There's like advisor stories that we can show and bring for like, that are sort of like, here's an example of how Walter, for example, grew a group's business from $300,000 in revenue to almost $4 million in revenue with Tern, right? Like telling that story, learning like very tactical tricks and tips is going to, or tips and tricks is going to be super helpful. But then it's like, okay, let's also make sure we're pairing that with our expertise on like the group's product and having, Brad start to say like, hey, here's how we thought about designing beautiful landing pages that will convert using the tools, right? And actually like bringing that type of thing to life. So really pairing how to build a business with fill in the blank groups, social media, things like just like actually building your business for the first time if you're newer to the industry. Then pairing that with these ideas of like, how do you use the tools to do it? And how do you use the tools to scale it? So that's where you think about these verticals like AI, like automations and workflows, like having actual workshops and content pre-created that you will literally be able to build, have, Tern team members as TAs come over and help you with where you get stuck, like that type of thing. We just think is so exciting. So really fun. I mean, this is like one of those other products that is go outside of the Tern product, but that you're really hoping to drive value in the industry with, in that like, we want this to be an annual thing, and we want this to be the best conference for combining theory with actual implementation in your business, which is why we said we were going to do this in the first place. Is like, as you hear every week, I'm like, oh, I'm in Palm Springs. Now I'm in Toronto. Now I go to a lot of these conferences. A lot of them are super valuable, but a lot of them also leave the implementations out, right? They just can't actually help you understand, like, here's what you should do and here's how to do it, because they have people there that are using all these different tools. We don't have to do that. We can assume that if you're at this conference, you're using Tern. And so we're going to take that theory and then we're going to help you build it in your business. And so that we think will be a recipe for success. So I'm stoked. The fact that Molly is excited to like not only go on a cruise, but to like, which is outside of her house, but also to like have dinners and drinks with everybody. I mean, that says more than you know. It's going to be really fun. And we hope to see you all there.
Wait, one question before we move on. If people haven't signed up for the users conference yet, how would you recommend they do so?
We do still have some space. So Tern.travel is the website. And if you go there, you'll notice on the top navigation, there's a button that says conference, and you can register and find all the details there. And if you want more info, you can also just email me, David at Tern.travel, and we'll get you connected to the right people at the company. So
that was very slick back and forth, you guys. Well done.
You like that? Yeah, it's good.
Wait, that was I just want to clarify.
Always be selling.
Always be selling. You'll learn that on the cruise. No, I'm just kidding. All right, with that, we're moving on. Let's talk about organization, right? How can people stay organized using Tern? We've made some big leaps forward there this week, and Molly's going to kick that off.
I am. So ever since we launched folders for activity templates, advisors have been like beating down the doors, I think is the right expression, for folders for their email templates, which is the next biggest one. And so excited that we finally launched this a few days ago. And I was looking at the data. They've already created 350 email folders. And what did we launch this yesterday? I think it was like yesterday or the day before. So that is a lot of folders already. Like, dang, that's amazing. And the Facebook posts about it was very, very hype. People are extremely excited to be creating folders. I also checked, and I feel like this is such a high number that I'm almost like, is it wrong? But I don't think it's wrong. People have created 5.7K activity folders at this point, which is like,
wow,
a wild amount of folders. So people love folders, let me tell you. The other kind of cool thing about email template folders, which I've talked about before on the podcast, but we did actually take some time to really what we call like refactor and improve the code and the consistency of the code related to all the different library item types. So we launched email template folders like yesterday or the day before, and I'm already testing and basically ready to release form folders. And then task template folders is going to be like any day now too. So you'll kind of see the momentum really pick up there, which has been really exciting.
It's like really fun. This is one of those elements where it's like we had heard folders over and over again, and we're kind of like, yeah, like some people want those, but like, how important is it really? And I mean, almost 6,000 activity template folders in a couple weeks is insane. 350 in 2 days or 2.5 days at most is insane. Like, it just goes to show how much this content matters and like the organization matters. And so it's really fun to think about, the fact that pretty soon every activity or every library item basically will be able to be organized into folders, and being able to think longer term around like how do we use that structure to inform personalized recommendations and those types of things is going to be neat. So very excited about the folders and to have those kind of all out. We also invested quite a bit of time in groups this week. Brad, you want to kick off some of the groups work we did?
Yes. So probably the biggest one I think people are most excited about is that now you can officially export a list of all travelers who are on a group and see like which, if there are multiple travelers going on the same sub trip, those things are all outlined in an export. And we have some basic details in there. There's more to come. There's more things like all of the form responses or like lodging selection, stuff like that. We hear you. We know it's important, but even just being able to get a basic export of travelers will go a long way. And I think, David, you were saying like you actually found this in real time at a conference.
I had 2 meetings on Wednesday morning where this came up. And so like I'm at breakfast like with somebody and they're like, hey, I'd love to learn more about the group's product. Like I'm using part of it, but like the thing I'm struggling with is how do I get these suppliers and they'll be like, hey, we need this information about the travelers. And so I have to like, basically maintain this entire other sheet and then I send that over. And I'm like, oh, like here's a list of all your sub trips. And literally like I'll refresh the page. It was like, there's the 1-click download that brings in the core information of the trip. I kid you not, I went to the second meeting of the day and she pulls up this like giant Google sheet of everything. And she's like, yeah, like I have to maintain all this here because like room capacity and like managing that. And I'm like, oh, well, actually, like here's where you can find room capacity management. And as of today, you can also download this list of all the travelers that are on there. And to your point, Brad, like we'll add other fields, but like the most important fields are there when you need to send a manifest to your clients. Maybe it's a destination wedding and they want to know who's booked. Now it's a click of a button, be like, here's who booked, right? Like here's where we're at. And we'll add more information. So that's a click of a button to give your suppliers everything that they need. But it was that was a really fun win happening in real time at the conference. So pretty fun.
And we added some other cool stuff to groups. So I think for our loyal podcast listeners, you know that I'm kind of on a quest to kill clicks. And so I've started getting these really fun emails from advisors being like, here's another way to like murder clicks or like kill clicks. It's
you
like
think on a list yet?
Yeah. This is for sure flagged.
Like Molly's getting a lot of emails about murder. Seems like a problem.
Yeah.
Am I on a list, like a government list? Probably. Yeah. I mean, for sure. So the like murder and combined with circus experience, I feel like is a bad like overlapping. Anyways, so the latest on our quest to do this is actually letting you change the sub trip status right from your trip overview from your group trip overview. So if you're like looking at all your sub trips, maybe you've used the nice new export button and you're like, oh, actually, I just moved this one to booked or this one to planning or what have you, whatever statuses you've set up. You can actually just like click right into the little status label from the overview page and just change it right there. Which again, just instead of having to click into the sub trip and then update the status more from the top bar. And then we also eliminated one of these areas that just kept coming up as just so confusing. It was actually a pretty gnarly one to fix on the engineering side. So it kind of kept getting punted a little bit week over week. And I'm just so happy it's finally solved. And I'll do my best to describe it. Brad might have to like swoop in and save me. But today, when you like set up your group trip itinerary, a lot of the prices that your clients will see are ultimately like calculated based on the selections that they make. So just as an example, like if you've set up room-based pricing and the client actually hasn't selected those rooms yet, we don't actually know what the final rate that they will see will be. Previously, that all worked and showed correctly to your client, but on the advisor side, it would sometimes show like that the final price would be $0 or even like a negative amount if you set a deposit, because again, we're not actually calculating what the final balance will be. Like we just don't have enough information. So now we show just a better empty state that's like the final balance will be calculated after selections are made, and that just clears up the confusion. So again, it was always working fine on the client side, but it's a little bit disturbing to the advisor if they think it's going to show like a negative amount to the client, for example.
Yeah, and that also works for regular trips. If you're doing room options on regular trips, there'll probably be less confusing there as well, where it'll just tell you like, hey, we'll give you a price, but like after they've made their selections.
And I think it was James who made that fix. Am I making that up? Anyways.
No, it was James. James did export. James did the like better language there. So yeah, James is.
And anytime engineers have to touch our like payments and authorizations code, they deserve an award, because it's like something that we have to handle with a lot of care. There's a lot of different cases, and so yeah, just big shout out to James for doing all that.
For digging in. That's so exciting. And I'm personally excited about that, because we'll do demos and it'll be like, just ignore that this says like negative $200. And it's like, because it'll make sense once we show the itinerary. So that's really, that's fun that has been updated. And one of the other quality of life things that people are going to be very excited about is the editor having been making like quite a bit of progress there. Maya, are you talking about editor too, I think?
I certainly can. I think that was a little gap in our podcast agenda assignment. We're making some good progress on editor. I think we should be fully wrapped actually in the next couple of weeks, which is pretty cool. We're actually like all of the work on the advisor side for activities and some of these bigger areas you really want the editor is like in flight and should be wrapping up pretty soon. One caveat there is, in order to actually release the new editor for like your trips and stuff, we also need to make sure that we're properly supporting and testing on the mobile app. And so there's a little bit of a lag there where our mobile squad needs to actually like build and test and make sure that we're not causing any issues for rendering on the native iOS and Android mobile application. So even though it's almost done on our engineer, like on the web engineering side, it's still going to be a couple weeks, but yeah, making very, very good progress.
But does this mean like we're fairly confident by the end of July, the block editor will be gone?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Very confident.
Like that is, I mean, we've been talking about this for like 6 months, and it's like we're finally, when people, and just like, let the record show, when people are like, we really hate the editor, we're like, yeah, we get it, but it's going to be a real pain to like replace. We're 6 months into this journey, but like the end is so close, and it's that, we saved the best for last. Like this is the thing that you actually care the most about, which is like every activity, every like part of the trip. That's where you're actually pasting in things most often. Like, so, very excited. It's also the most important.
The best for last, though, the last will actually be emails, and that is truly the best for last. We got that one next.
That's true. Okay. Second best for, well, I don't know. Yeah, we're tied. Tied for best. We saved the last two best things for last. All right, we're moving on.
I need to hear more, David.
The editor is going to be great. You're going to love it. We can't wait until it's in those two areas, and I'm going to move on. End of July, block editor's gone. I can't wait. It's going to be amazing. With that, we're moving on to one other little kind of update that is nice. Do you want to talk about that, Brad?
Yeah. So we made one more like quality of life improvement, specifically around commission reconciliation for agencies. So now both agencies and their advisors can see on the payouts tab, basically a total of what all of the payouts are, like the sum of all of them for agents, and the sum of all of the payouts, the equivalent of like what you're actually going to be making on your side in the agency. We know many agencies basically have their commission in one account that's waiting to be paid out. Once they pay out their agents, of course, that money gets paid, and then they move their portion of the commissions out into their own, separate actual like revenue account. And previously, you had to do a lot of math to figure out what your portion was that you needed to move out. So now that's at the top of the payouts tab, and also I think on the upcoming due tab for kind of due statements for advisors. So that one came in from Jennifer, and I think one of her advisors like actually saw just her amount from the from like her agent perspective. I was like, oh my gosh, I've made this much commission. Like that's incredible. And so it's cool to just like see kind of the dots connecting more and making that more obvious for advisors as well.
So cool. It's always fun, like when agency owners share wins from their travelers or their travel advisors, right? And so that one by Jennifer was like very exciting, the Facebook group. There's also a whole bunch. I mean, we're going to be talking about kind of the week ahead, and like one of the themes is mobile, but it was really fun. I think there are like 2 or 3 posts in the Facebook group just around travelers who are out on trips right now, and actually loving the mobile app as it exists today, and like how easy it was to find things. And I put a little bit of a somewhat snarky comment on the thread, being like, if you think it's good now, just wait, right? I mean, it's getting so much better. So Molly, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of what's cooking on the mobile side?
Yeah, and we'll definitely unpack this more in future podcasts when we started to release some of the pieces. But just to give like a little peek behind the curtain, so as with anything, I feel like words are especially hard today on this podcast. I feel like
I feel that, yeah.
You, David. So I think actually you're rubbing off on me. But anyways,
I'll take that.
So as with anything at Tern, we're kind of saying, what is our master plan for these like sets of upgrades, but then how are we moving backwards and breaking it into pieces that will like level up the experience week over week. And so probably early next week, the first little piece of this will happen. But there's a series of improvements to the Traveler mobile app that we're working on. Then we're going to move into Advisor mobile web to really start to optimize that, which will also be really huge. On the Traveler mobile app, we're kind of leveling up a few different things. There's just the overall like look and feel and polish, which is very much like a design driven exercise of just like making sure like we're auditing what are like the best mobile apps out there. How do they feel? How do the animations feel? How does like the overall styling not clash with advisor branding when we actually pull that in? So some of that stuff will actually start to trickle in next week, where you'll just maybe start to see a little bit like, oh, this is nicer. Like, oh, when I'm signing up, it just feels nicer. Oh, when I'm looking at my settings, it feels nicer. And then there's also some really important just like UX improvements, user experience improvements. So making it easier to see upcoming trips versus past trips in the app with like 2 little toggles between. So you're not just getting a flood of like any trip that you've ever been on. Making document access easier, making the itineraries more visual and having like photos kind of more front and center when you're actually looking down the itinerary view. Making sure the information hierarchy on the specific activities matches what you're expecting from web. So there's just like a bunch of these pieces that we're breaking into, again, like a sequence of features that each podcast will unpack, like what the latest one is. But again, the first one of those is going to be more focused on some of the more like almost like subtle foundational background styles and stuff to make the app feel a little bit more polished.
It's gonna be so cool. I mean, we'll dig into it on the future piece, but like watching the design demos that Ursula and the team kind of went through over the past 2 design Signups we've had, like literally chills. I'm like, this takes us from like the mobile app that people are already loving, but that we all kind of feel like, oh, there's like definitely a lot we want to do with mobile app, and it is. I feel very confident in saying going to like just leapfrog any of the other mobile apps that the advisor community has been able to use before. Like the level of polish, level of decision making, like the visual upgrades, just some of the interactions that we're looking at. Like again, this will be a multi-week journey. It's not going to be happening overnight, but it is really fun to start to see how this is going to truly level up the advisor or the client experience for all of you. So really, really looking forward to getting these things out. But we're also improving another part of the client experience by improving forms. And Brad, you're going to talk about that, I think.
Yeah, we'll share more next week. But the basics here are we're going to take what we did on the trip request form, where you can collect multiple details from multiple travelers at the same time and customize which details you want to collect. And we're going to borrow that and move it over to the contact form as well. So if you have a workflow that's more like, hey, I collect basic details when someone submits a trip request, but before they're actually going to travel, I want them to go in and fill out passport details and addresses and all these things, instead of having to say, hey, go through the same form, 4 or 5 times, however many people are on the trip, just one form, and they can just click add additional traveler a few times and much clearer, like, did you submit the form, not did you submit the form 5 times and find the right little button that tells you to submit it again instead of, starting from scratch. So that's going to be huge. Really excited about that.
So you mean if somebody's working with like, I don't know, a family of 6, instead of having to fill it out 6 times, they can fill it out once and share everything that they need.
Exactly. And really shortly after that, for a family of 6, you could even say like, hey, copy the address from the first person who filled this out, or like, don't require emails for children because that's kind of funny. They don't have one. So yeah.
I thought you got those at birth now. No, that's not a thing.
I know we've shipped a lot of really cool things in the past few months. I think this is going to be in my top 3. And I don't even get to work on it personally, which is like, I don't get FOMO. I usually get JOMO, but like I have FOMO working on this feature. It's going to be so cool. I'm really excited.
And I do feel like just because maybe not everyone knows JOMO, you may have to just clarify that.
JOMO, I thought it was a universal term, is joy of missing out. So I usually get joy of missing out because I'm very introverted, but I'm fearing missing out on this feature because Jade and Brad are working on it, and it's just going to be so epic. So,
and this is also a perfect tie-in to like why I said it was such a big deal that Molly's very excited about the users conference. So just, remember, you can register at Tern.travel, click on conference, and it's going to be, I mean, this just like looking ahead for the next 6 months, right? We're sort of like starting Q3 here in July and looking at the team, right? There's a lot of this kind of ramping and onboarding, and like we have basically doubled R&D. We've added all these new functions. There's a lot kind of behind the scenes that we talked about at the beginning of the podcast where like everyone's sort of figuring out like where they fit in this like Tern 3.0 or whatever we're on. But like you can already start to see the gears start to spin faster and faster in parallel. And like the words are hard today. And it is just going to be such a fun second half of the year as these updates start to roll out, as this users conference comes together, as we look at some of the other partnerships that it's like way too early to talk about. Like it's going to be a big year. So this is the best place to have the inside scoop to the things that are coming, get a little bit of a sneak peek, hear the thought process behind it. So if you want to make sure you are the expert in all things Tern, go ahead and click on that subscribe button, click on the like, leave a comment on what you think about Molly's Clown Camp experience, and we will see you next week, everybody. Thanks. Bye.